Take a look at these 3 photos. Which one of these houses do you think could have major problems? Well, actually, it's all 3 of them. Now, don't freak out if these look exactly like the places that you've saved to tour this weekend, because most homes around the Phoenix Metro look pretty similar. And it doesn't mean that they're all falling apart. But there are 7 things you need to check the moment that you arrive that will tell you instantly if you're looking at a bad house. When I'm out touring properties with clients, we can usually do this in about 60 seconds. So in this video, I'm going to show you what those 7 things are and how the sellers might even be trying to cover up some of these problems. Now, the reason you can do this so quickly is because you can check 6 out of the 7 things. Oh no, what did I just do?
6, 7!
Before you go inside. And we're going to inspect the house the same way that it's built, bottom to top. To start, we're going to walk the outside of the home and look for a couple of very specific things on the foundation. Most houses in Phoenix are built on a post-tension slab, which is concrete that has steel cables running through it, and then those get tightened after it cures to help prevent cracking. So when we're checking the foundation, we want to look for a couple of things. First, are the cables doing their job, and is there any cracking? If there is, then we need to look closely at the cracks because some are far more serious than others. And to show you what I mean, let's use your car as an example. If you see hairline cracks, those are like that little tire pressure light that you've probably been ignoring for a few weeks. It's not going to ruin the car, but yeah, next time you're at the gas station, go ahead and air up those tires. Hairline cracks probably aren't a major foundation issue, but you still want to have them sealed with some epoxy to keep the moisture out, and I'll explain why that's so important in just a second. Next, we have the larger vertical cracks. These are like your check engine light coming on. Your car probably isn't going to give up on you right away, but it could if you don't figure out what the problem is and then get it fixed. Vertical cracks wider than a dime are going to cost a little bit more to deal with, but as long as you get them taken care of before they get to about 1/4 of an inch, it's usually a pretty simple fix. But if you see cracks that are horizontal, that is like your check engine light flashing and smoke billowing out of the car. It's time to pull over and run. Horizontal cracks are a sign that the foundation is shifting and the post-tension cables are failing, and this can be a massive and expensive repair that you do not want to take on. Now, if you don't find any cracks, that's a good start, but unfortunately, we're not out of the woods just yet. We also want to pay close attention to see if any of the post-tension cable ends are exposed. If you find one that is, and it's rusting, that's another warning sign that there could be some bigger problems. If too much water gets onto those cables and it keeps rusting, they could lose tension and fail, which is another really expensive repair. And the last thing we want to check on the foundation is to make sure that the homeowner isn't trying to pull a fast one by covering up some of these problems. I was looking at a house with a client last year, and we noticed that there was an area of the foundation that looked like it had a fresh concrete patch and some mismatched paint. He liked the place enough that he still wanted to put in an offer, but I wanted to get a foundation expert out to check that area. And what he found was that the homeowner had just tried to put some cheap concrete patch over the top of some pretty big cracks. The problem was he didn't inject any sealer in to keep the moisture out. There was also an exposed cable, and that looked pretty bad, and the contractor thought that it was going to cost about $15,000 to repair everything, so we canceled the contract. Now, I don't think the homeowner was trying to be dishonest, just a DIYer doing something that they shouldn't have. But if you see something like that on a foundation, assume there's a reason and get a pro out to look at it. And going back to the photos we used at the beginning, one of them has a big red flag that somebody could be trying to cover up some of the foundation issues. Take a look at this one. You see how the stucco goes all the way down to the ground? Normally, you don't see that. It usually ends right above the foundation. Now, they could have just done this for cosmetic reasons, but it makes me a little uneasy not being able to see the concrete. This house was also a flip, which has some other risks that I'll talk about a little later. But if you come across a place like this, where it looks like they might be trying to cover up parts of the foundation, proceed with caution. Once we finish looking over the slab, we want to check the soil that's right next to it. And if you did see any cracks in the foundation, then I can almost guarantee this is what caused them. Most people will blame poor soil quality, but that's not really the issue. It's water resting against the concrete. Arizona isn't famous for its rain, but when it does show up, it usually comes in furious downpours. And because it doesn't rain here very often, most houses don't have gutters, so the water simply drops straight off the roof. The real problem is when grading issues cause the water to pool right next to the foundation. That's going to weaken the concrete and cause it to crack, and if it's been doing this for years, then you might be looking at some really expensive foundation repairs. Now this one has some easy fixes and some problems big enough to make you walk away. If you can fix the grading issue just by adding some soil to slope the water the other direction, that's not a big deal. Sometimes you have to add gutters up above, which is a little bit more money, but still pretty manageable. But if the problem is that the landscaping in the backyard and the walkways around the house are funneling water towards the foundation, that's a big issue. You're probably going to have to tear a lot of that out and bring in somebody to regrade everything for proper drainage. And honestly, that might be your sign that this isn't the right house. Then the last thing we want to look at on the ground level is signs of unwanted guests in the house. Now, I'm not talking about your in-laws or even scorpions, probably a tough choice for some of you, but some tiny insects that a lot of people don't even realize we have in Arizona. When we're checking the foundation, we want to look for any spots of dirt that are stuck to it. Most of it's going to be harmless, but if you see little tubes like this traveling up to the siding, that's trouble. Those are termite tubes, and yes, we have subterranean termites here in Arizona. If you spot a single termite tube, it may not be a big deal, but you'd have to do a much more thorough inspection to know for sure. But if you find several of them, nope. Time to move on. This is another thing that someone may try to hide by just brushing the dirt tubes off the foundation wall. That's why when you get a home inspection, you want to add a termite screening because they'll do a much more detailed check for this kind of stuff. The next thing we want to look at is something that literally decides whether you can survive in your house. And that's not an exaggeration. There are nearly 600 heat-related deaths in Arizona every year, and a good chunk of those happen because this part of the home wasn't working. So when you're looking around outside, pay close attention to the condenser unit for the air conditioning system. Now in older homes, this is a little tricky because a lot of the AC units are actually up on the roof. But if it's on the ground next to the house, take a look at its condition. You should be able to tell pretty fast whether or not the homeowner was having it serviced. An AC unit generally lasts for around 10 years, and with good maintenance, even longer. But if the house you're looking at has one that looks like this, with a bunch of rust everywhere and it just looks old and beat up, then it's probably on its last legs. Replacing one of these is going to be a minimum of about $5,000, and most home sellers will balk if you ask for a replacement. So if you see a tired old unit, it's probably easier to just pass on the house. Now, if you're coming to Arizona from another state, it might seem a little weird to see a house with an AC unit that's up on the roof. I moved here from the Pacific Northwest, where it was always on the ground, and the next thing that we're going to check was never mounted on the outside like it is here in Arizona. But that's good news because it makes it easy for us to look at it. Just like the AC unit, we want to see if the electrical panel is in good shape. This is usually mounted on the outside wall of the garage, and if you open it up and see something that looks like this, then head back to the car. An old panel and outdated wiring is a major fire hazard, and you're usually looking at about 20 grand to replace it all. Once we've finished with the electrical panel, there's just one more thing that we need to look at on the outside. Unfortunately, we're not going to get a very close look at it, but the main thing that we want to do is spot any major problems that you can see from the ground. This is where we finally look up to the roof, and depending on what kind of surface is up there, we may not be able to get much information. Older homes will often have comp shingles, which I've got to be honest, I would never buy a house that uses those. The oil in the shingles wears out so much faster when it's getting blasted by the Arizona sun day after day, so that 30-year roof will be lucky to make it past 10. Now, if you're looking at a house with a comp shingle roof, try to see if any of the shingles are missing. If they are, that's a hard pass. Next, look to see if any of the little granules from the shingles have fallen to the ground. Sometimes you'll see them in the driveway or on the patio, but if those are coming off, it means that the shingles have dried out and the roof needs to be replaced. The more common type of roof here is clay tile, and it's going to be hard to tell if there's any problems from the ground level. The more important piece of a tile roof is actually what's underneath it. The underlayment. This is your moisture barrier, and if the underlayment is worn out, then it's time for someone to go pull up all those tiles, replace it, and then reset the tiles. And it's not cheap. The only way you're gonna know for sure if a tile roof is bad is to have a roofing contractor go pull up a few of the tiles and look at it. But there are some warning signs that you can see without having to bring someone in. First, check to see if any of the tiles look like they've slid out of place. That doesn't mean for sure that the roof is bad, but it's a sign that maintenance wasn't a priority. Plus, it exposes that part of the underlayment to more sun and it could break down faster. Next, check to see if there are any cracked tiles. Now again, this isn't a big issue on its own because just about every roof in Arizona is going to have a few chipped or cracked tiles. But if there's a whole bunch of them, then it could be a sign that the roof is older and is going to need replaced. Finally, check around the eaves and fascia boards for any signs of water damage. If you see anything that looks like this, then it could be a sign that the roof is leaking, and that's another spendy repair that you probably don't want to take on. But before you ever get to the house, when you're still at home and you're looking at photos, this is a good time to take a closer look at the ones that show the roof. When I showed you this photo at the beginning of the video, you might not have noticed this right away, but take a look at these parts of the roof right here. That's called rolled roofing, and it is absolute junk. This stuff is notorious for water leaks, and a lot of home insurance companies won't even cover your house if they spot rolled roofing on it. And if we take a closer look at this photo right here, we can see that there's just a slight bow in the roof. That's a sign of structural problems, and that's another pass. Once we move inside, there are a million things you could look at, but if we're looking to find out quickly if it's a bad house or not, there's one thing in particular we need to find. In older homes, it might be in the laundry room, but most of the time, it's gonna be out in the garage. And what we're looking for is the water heater. There's really just two steps to this, so it's nice and simple. First, we wanna see if there is a ton of corrosion and if it's looking pretty obvious that this thing's about to give out. If so, you're looking at a few $1,000 in repairs, and that's another situation where you should probably move on. Now, if it looks good, check the label to see when it was installed, or at least when it was manufactured. Most water heaters last around 10 years, and if you're getting close to that, it's probably gonna need replaced soon. Now, even if all these things check out, there's something else you need to watch out for, and that's where this photo comes in. When you see a picture like that of an older house, there's a good chance that you're looking at a flip. Now, that's not a terrible thing by itself, but what you have to remember about flips is that the investor isn't thinking,
how can I make this as nice as possible for the buyer?
It's,
how can I spend the least amount of money to dress this up and get it sold?
Investors are almost like magicians. They'll try to distract you by showing you a nicely updated kitchen and bathroom, but what you don't see are the issues hiding in the attic, like the magician's trick coins and gadgets stuffed inside his coat. This property is actually a pretty good example of that. The kitchen photo definitely stands out, and there's even this nice looking pool in the backyard. But the real worry is this picture, and you can see some rolled roofing still on the patio. In this photo, the wood already looks pretty weathered. They just threw some paint over it. And if that rolled roofing leaks, then you're gonna have to replace the patio cover. So the lesson here is this: if you're considering a flip property, get a thorough inspector to make sure that there aren't any ugly surprises waiting for you. But there are plenty of other issues I see in houses all the time, and if a place has any of these, you should never buy it. Some don't even have anything to do with the house, but rather the area around it. So watch this video next, where I'll show you the kinds of houses in Arizona that you should never buy.